You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
All of that was great. You only lost me at the one key word you used, but that was after when you used your cop word, the just relax. I was like,
what's my cop word?
Relax. That's every fucking cop's word.
I don't have cop words. Relax. Relax.
I don't appreciate that.
Just relax.
I can be the most relaxed person and be like, oh, like even right there, I'm like, that was good. That went so good. I'm in line with that. That felt good. And you said relax, not even to me. And I was like, it's on.
I'm not relaxed. Baby, you just need to calm down.
Okay, that's worse. Okay.
Oh, I forgot to light the candle.
Light it. Are we?
Yeah.
Is this in the?
Yeah, all this is the podcast.
I'm just gonna make it look like it was a part of it and dance.
This is the podcast with the mostest. Right?
Okay, yeah. Let's do it. I'm dancing.
So what should we talk about right off the bat?
We should talk about dancing.
Dancing?
Yeah. No, how are you feeling?
Right now?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm, right before we push record, people, we had a disagreement, and anytime we have a disagreement, then it sends me into I have to actively not spiral out into all of my chaotic programming of failure and frustration and anger and defense. And so right now I'm not feeling 100%.
Yeah.
But I'm also okay.
Yeah.
In general, I've been doing much better.
Good.
Yeah, I've been pretty stressed lately and I have been battling depression, and my anxiety's been getting very not out of control, but just overwhelming, I guess is probably an accurate way of saying it. And then I had the remembrance of oh yeah, I have cyclical emotional patterns that I go through all the time. And this is the time of year where I am depressed and feel like I'm going crazy. And that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
I get to these points in my head and in the processing of everything where it just starts to become you're going batshit crazy. You can't keep track of your thoughts, and all of your thoughts are spiraling into pure chaos. And the next thing I know, I start having some of those crazy intrusive thoughts. Oof. Where it's I'm sitting here typing at the computer this morning and a bullet's going to fly through the window. And then I picture my brain splattered all over the wall. And then I'm that's going to really suck for Steph. And then I'm I'm going to be so relaxed because I'll be dead. All those kind of intrusive things start to happen. So this time of year specifically, mm-hmm. I'm glad you asked how I'm doing, because now I'm all wound up thinking about it, is really hard for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really hard for me. I get very depressed, and like I've said, my anxiety and all the other things that come out to play. So.
Those fucking intrusive thoughts.
Yeah.
They are gnarly. It's like those are what seem to push, I guess speaking from my own experience, push me over the edge, because it's I have when it's coming up, you're experiencing the depression and the anxiety and all of these things, and you're trying and you're staying with your routines and your regimens and trying to take care of yourself and allowing yourself the space where you're not. But then those intrusive thoughts come in. And at first there's just right,
just they're so subtle.
Yeah.
It's almost you catch a whiff of it mm-hmm. on the wind, and it's that was kind of a crazy thought. What? And then your brain's what thought?
What thought? Yeah.
There's nothing here.
Hey,
everything's fine.
Crazy.
You're normal.
Crazy.
You're normal. Look at you, normal guy. And then 2 minutes later, it's fucking nut job. What? Who? Did you say I'm a fucking nut job? No. I said you should eat some nuts. Go get some peanuts out of the cupboard. You're fine. Everything's okay.
Just do some breathing. You're fine.
Yeah.
Everything's all you need to do is breathe. Control. Everything's okay. It's really not your fault. It's theirs.
Do you have that?
I have terrible intrusive thoughts. Man. It's where it starts off just minor with these things, and and you push it out to fast forward to the end. It's almost like it's on a repetitive replay,
right?
Like a fast. It's so that thought is going, and then that's when you're
it's over. I'm done.
the circus is in town. The shit show is here. Here comes me and all my trauma.
This is when
it's so hard.
What is it? This is when the schizophrenia finally takes over.
So I'm so glad you said that. Like, that is such a terrible feeling and such a normal feeling. Like, so many, maybe there's people out there that are like, Psh, I never thought that. Okay, you might not have that intrusive thought, but what intrusive thoughts are coming up? And if you don't have intrusive thoughts, like, high five.
Then don't
Good
listen
for
to this
you.
fucking podcast. We don't want you listening. Turn it off right now.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking liars.
So just the fact that you're bringing awareness to that is huge, because you can feel so crazy, so alone. And then you don't talk about them till they get to the point where they are that repetitive, that super fast, that chaotic. And sometimes, sometimes they're just like crazy random thoughts like that. I don't mean to use crazy, but sporadic random thoughts. Sometimes they're like actions that you want to like take against yourself, and some people get them against other people. And so it's just like, instead of talking about them when they're first coming up and being like, wow, these are just things that brains do. These are things that, we can even take it a step further and be like, whatever energy is okay. But these are just things that happen to people. And if we can talk about them when they're in their like beginning stages and take away the shame, the fear, the crazy out of them, then they have a less likeliness of going to the extreme of either making you feel crazy and worthless or making you feel hopeless.
So in your mind, I like what you're saying, right?
I like what you're saying. I'm really glad you said that. That was really brave.
I like the words that are coming out of your mouth. What would this look like in our relationship? Am I supposed to, there are some intrusive thoughts that I have that I'm like, yeah, I will never tell that to anybody. There's no need for anybody to ever hear that thought out loud. Mm-hmm. I want that thought gone. Mm-hmm. I want that thing out of my head, never to return, right? Mm-hmm. And then 2 minutes later, it's back. What if because there are some intrusive thoughts that I'm comfortable sharing with you. Yeah. And then there's others that I'm just not. Mm-hmm. And I think rather than trying to designate back and forth, what if we just had some way of saying hey, I'm having some intrusive thoughts today and they're becoming challenging to deal with. So then we can just offer because that's the other thing too, is what are you supposed to do other than just support me, right? It's not like you're in there.
There's nothing else to
navigating
do.
Those things, but
sometimes saying them takes the power away.
Yeah.
Sometimes saying them will do that. And sometimes that won't. Sometimes saying them might take you to a level, depending on who you say it to. Maybe that would be something that you could share with a therapist or a coach, and things that feel safe. You have to discern, who does this feel safe to talk to? Because everything isn't going, even if it is safe for you to tell me this, there might be something in your body that does not feel safe to tell me that. And you don't have to push through that. So if it's I know that I could tell her, but I don't want her to know this intrusive thought. That's okay. You don't have to hurt yourself further by saying it to somebody who you don't want to say it to. But if you need support.
Yeah, if I tell you this intrusive thought, you will see me differently.
Yeah.
You won't, it's you'll definitely see me differently if I tell you this thought.
So if you have that belief, then telling me that thought may not be the stretch that you need.
Yeah.
That may just be I'm having this intrusive thought and it's hard right now. Do you have any idea what kind of support that would look like? So if you happen to have awareness of that, you can be I need a little bit of space today, or I would like to connect today. Is there something that you want to go for a walk? Do something that just having awareness of it and having that space be okay changes how you behave in that space. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Let me try again. So if you have this intrusive thought.
You don't have to try again. It made total sense.
Yeah?
Yeah.
When you have awareness, then you can support yourself through it a little bit better.
Yeah, makes total sense.
So here's this. You don't ever have to tell me your intrusive thoughts.
Thank you.
And you can share them if it feels okay in your body and it feels safe for you to do so.
The same applies.
Thank you. And I think it's also really easy for me to say that to you, because I'm there's shit I'm not telling you, dude. Right? Yeah, I have and there's stuff that I want to. I'm this is where I'm at. It is dark and it's scary, and I need you to, like, you can't pull me out of the hole. I have to do that myself, right? But I would really like it if you would turn on a flashlight for me.
Sit up at the top of the hole and be like, it's okay, baby.
Shine a light. Let me know that I'm not in here by myself.
Yeah. That's good.
So sometimes it's like that.
Is there a part of you that wants to know?
Oh, of course.
All of my intrusive thoughts?
Of course there is.
Is there a part of you that's like, oh my God, I want to know those ones so
There
bad?
is. And there's a part of me that it's like, I hope someday you feel safe enough to tell me everyone.
How funny is that?
Right?
Because that's so not healthy.
It's what it is.
Having that desire to want to know, I'm not saying that's not healthy, but like the idea that we're just going to share everything with each other.
Every thought ever.
So not
every
healthy.
thought ever.
You don't have to. If you're in a relationship, you don't have to.
That's like, there's things that you get to keep.
Yeah.
You get to keep. And that's not saying keeping secrets and not sharing. And then using that as a tactic to be like, nope, I don't have to share. I got to get, like, I mean, if you're going to use it that way, go for it, but how does that really feel? So, but yeah, there are things. So do I want to know? Yes. It's like, there's also like this part of me that wants to know so you can see that it doesn't change the way I think about you. Like, you can tell me these things and I'll likely love you more. I mean, it's not that I'm going to love you more because of what you're saying, but when we connect and I see more of you and I learn more about you and you share with me, like, that builds. But that doesn't mean that's your obligation to tell me every thought. We build in a lot of ways, and you do not have to share things that you're not ready to share.
See, I can't even like begin to fathom that telling you intrusive thoughts is somehow going to make you love me more.
So don't tell me.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean,
and I'm going to hold your hand and love you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some that I can tell you and share with you, right? Like that one that I just shared was legitimately a thought that I had this morning.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, that's interesting. Because I'm not even like depressed today.
Yeah.
Lately, I've been feeling really good. We've been doing that Kriya and that's been helping a lot. And so I've been doing much better. But yeah, fuck December, January, February. This 3-month stint is always, the hardest for me. And it seems to be when I do all the work. That's like, I don't do all the work during this time period, but it's like, because our son asked us the other day in regards to like when we moved into houses and stuff like that, because we moved into our house in Utah. We bought it and moved in together in January of like 2014. And then this one is the same thing where we're moving during this time period of the year, right? We're moving. So there's big transitions during this time period. And then I think to like the one that stands out in my mind is when I was a teenager. And I went to Minnesota and moved to Minnesota. That was like, I think I moved in November.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought you were like in the summer.
No. So,
I know you experienced the winter, but I thought that was just the time. I thought you went like right after high school.
No.
Oh.
I moved like, I don't think it was October. I think it was in November.
Okay.
And I was there in December and January. And then
things went fine.
Moved back home in February.
Things like choices were good.
Yeah, it was a beautiful time of life.
You learned a lot.
But I can think back to like big transitions and like movement happening for me during these time periods. And it's not just like moving to a new place or something, but there's this time of year for whatever reason is both like highly chaotic and stressful and ridden with anxiety for me. And I make big shifts and changes during this time period. Think back to last January, some of the big shifts and changes that I made, right? So there's something to do with all of that. Like in my mind, there's like the seasonal depression, like the seasonal affective disorder, whatever we want to call it, that's at play. I think there's going to be some epigenetic component to it where something about like winter is, it's time to change things up. It's time to move. It's time to shift things, right?
Well, it's when the things are like dying, like it's the end, it's the completion. It's the things are like falling away and allowing for the rebirth that comes. So things have to die. Like the cyclical nature is things die to be reborn. It doesn't always mean death, but it can mean death. So that like feeling all that like is
pretty normal.
I'm not
Tell me
saying
it's normal.
Yeah, right. I'm like, I'm not saying it's normal.
Can you, I mean, obviously I just mentioned like us moving, but what does this time period of the year feel like for you? And do you feel like it has connection and correlation to like a pattern for you? Respond to that question
Not
as I pick up my
me.
cards.
You said 3 months, and I was like, first of all, my first thought was, man, that'd be nice. 3 months, that's all. And then I immediately got like giggly, like, you think it's 3 months? So it was both. For me, what's it bring up with me without projecting all over your cute 3 month? I absolutely recognize that, and I haven't always. Winter has always been a shift, but it's what I've had like more full awareness of recently is how like I like stretch hard. Like I grab stuff in the fall. Like if you think about when we decided to move and when I was like game on, was in the fall.
Yeah.
When the fall comes is when I try something new. I try something bold and daring and expansive, and I grow and expand myself. I like dive in deep to work, and then I hibernate in the winter, and I have a hard time. I have a really hard time, and I try I try to find the joy. Winters are hard, and then I judge myself so bad come spring because I'm like, this is the time of rebirth and things are growing and things are happy and it's spring. This is when people come out of their seasonal affective disorder. This is when people are feeling happy. Like I understand the winter. I can give myself that because another year's gone by where I haven't bought myself that magic light that's supposed to fix it and make me happy. The happy lights, right?
You want one of those?
I've wanted one of those for like 20 years, but I don't even know if it's been 20 years, but for a long time since I've learned about what they are, I'm like, I need one of those. But never have I been like, you're worth buying one of those. So I've never bought it. One day I'll buy it for myself. Somebody else can't buy it for me. So if you're like, gift, I have to like find like my worth for that. Even like driving with the windows open in the winter and taking my glasses off, which I don't have on right now, I just realized. So the sun can do that like sideways coming into your eyes and getting that. But the spring is when you're supposed to lift out of that. And for some reason, the spring is incredibly challenging for me.
Really?
I like spring is when I'm like, fuck it. I tried, didn't work. Peace out. I'm out. Spring is so hard for me to get through. So, and then the summer is like where I start, I don't know, feeling alive again, making plans, wanting to, and then here comes fall and I'm like, let's do this. I'm ready. So I very much am a cyclical person.
I think we all are.
Yeah, I do too.
I think we need to remember that.
Yeah.
Because it's like this time of year, might not be the best time of year to move across the country. It is a good time of year for us to do these things. But yeah, I think it's important to remember. Yeah. It makes me wonder. You asked me at the beginning of the episode, how am I feeling? But it felt like you had some question or something. And
no.
We just got squirreled out into this.
This is perfect. This is where I want to be.
Yeah.
Oh. And I love the awareness that you have of it because you've had like cognitive awareness of your cycles, but I don't feel like you, and maybe I'm wrong, but it didn't appear that you had body awareness of your cycles as to where before it was almost like an excuse. Yeah, this is what happens. This is where I get on this time. And it's an excuse for toxic behaviors towards yourself and towards others. And that has not been how you have like brought yourself into this space. And not just here, like the last bit, like you're like, you have these, but it hasn't been an excuse. You're like, oh no, I'm loving myself. Like the way you said it last night, you're like, this is the time that it's hardest for me. like you mentioned that, and you're feeling into that and loving your body through it, as opposed to excusing actions through it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just very different. Your energy is very different with it. Did you have awareness of that, or?
I don't think so. I think the awareness for me is just like the reminder that has helped. It was suddenly like, oh yeah, this is totally just a cycle for me, and it's kind of a pattern and a routine. And suddenly I had way less tension about it. Just felt more okay with being not okay, and less concerned about trying to fix it. It was like, oh yeah, this is just a pattern, and this will change.
Yeah.
This will flow. So it was just a really good reminder to have the awareness of like, oh yeah, this is what I do. And like, it's even because that's the, like, this is what I do makes it seem like I can do something else, as opposed to this is how I, like, this just what is, right? Like, it would be like trying to stop winter itself. Be like, I'm going to go out there every day.
Not this year.
And I'm going to fight against the cold, and I'm going to make sure that it's warm and it's not going to get below 30 degrees because I'm going to work really hard, and it's going to be 70 all winter long.
I can make it so.
Right. It's the same thing.
I can
where
positive think it
the
to
idea
summer
that I
all
can
the time.
somehow change this thing as opposed to just flow with it. And like all the things, because it's the same thing. It's the same old story of, I have healthy habits and routines and things that I can incorporate into everyday life that will help minimize this time period in regards to like all that negativity and the depression and the anxiety, the intrusive thoughts and the chaos, right? And spiraling. And the next thing you know, I had a day not long ago where I felt like I accomplished nothing and checked out by like 4:00. And just wanted to zone out watching TV and then like eating everything that I could get my hands on. And rather than, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a day like that, but that used to be a regular occurrence of like every day. And then that pattern of being stuck in that like negative cycle of unhealthiness would last weeks, as opposed to like a day.
Yeah.
You know? So I want to talk about the thing that we have been talking about online. So the stuff that we've been sharing on social lately, in this whole conversation around touch and physical like affection and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, let's do it.
Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
So we had this awareness. I don't even know how long we've been practicing this. We've been practicing this for a while. And the idea is that in relationships, you get into this place where like, it's like a free for all. It's almost like a free pass to grab your wife's boobs or her ass or any other part of her body whenever you decide that you want to. And this, I think, is really indicative of masculine, not masculine energy, but I think that this is really a common thing that men feel like they can do.
It stems back to women being property.
Go ahead.
Like, I'm not saying that's how you're viewing me or how any, like, as you say, you know, the heteronormative, like husband, wife, however, whatever dynamic marriage is out there. I'm not saying that that's how they're viewing it. But if you look at how things have, like, wives have been husbands' property.
Yes.
And so as much healing has come through, there's still like stuff that carries on. And this feels like a carryover trait to some extent, one aspect of it, right?
Well, I think a big aspect of this thing, like this idea, what we're trying to, it'll take us, because we're neurodivergent and we have ADD. So it's going to take us 20 minutes to articulate something that you already understand. So we're going to over-explain a lot here. But the idea is that you get into it, because I know fully, like, there's a point in our relationship, I can just use our relationship, even though I've seen it in all of my relationships, right? Okay. There's like this courting period where physical touch and physical affection, hand holding, caressing, kissing, hugging, and then like onward and upwards into like sex, right? All of that is on this like testing ground phase of like, what are they comfortable with? What's appropriate? What feels right? You know, it's like this back and forth game of trying to find wherever you guys are at in your relationship, depending upon how long you've been together, depending upon the other person. It's just like this back and forth, trying to flesh it out subconsciously through action. Like I've never had conscious conversations about this with anybody in a relationship until like you and I have started talking about it in the last couple of years. But it's that process that takes place in a relationship where you flesh out like the comfortability based off of how long we've been together and what the other person is comfortable with. And then at some point you get to a point in the relationship, and it's not just when you're like married or something, right? There comes a point in a relationship where you have agreed subconsciously that this is what is acceptable in our relationship. And I'm sure it looks different for everybody, right? But there's at some point in a relationship where it's like, this is what's acceptable. And that is like, in regards to like physical touch and connection and like intimate things that don't necessarily take place during an intimate setting. So it might be grabbing your boob or caressing your inner thigh or, you know, smacking your butt or whatever it is. All of this type of stuff, you and I went through that process that I described at some point in our relationship. And then we just settled into like what quote unquote is the norm. And I think that there's this idea that like men are constantly needing sex. So we're constantly like grabbing at you and trying to initiate sexual things in a way because we're constantly in need of it. And we did that. We played that out, right? And then the woman's job or her responsibility in this like dance back and forth is to just kind of be there for that type of behavior regardless, right? Wouldn't you? I mean, obviously you can speak to, I will go ahead and let you speak to the experience of what it is to be a woman in this.
I think you're doing a good job, and you're talking about your
explaining.
perspective,
Yeah.
which is your perspective of my interpretation on it. So you're allowed to give your perspective.
Yeah.
So you can keep going. I'm obviously going to give my perspective.
Yeah.
So you're good.
Go ahead and give me your perspective.
You just totally like tapped out, huh?
I got
Like, your
nervous.
turn. Yeah.
Well, so women do it this way,
Right?
and they think this way, and this is how a woman thinks. And yeah, so please.
Your perspective based off of conversations that we've had.
Yeah.
To a point, right? Which is good because you're like being curious about what it feels like for the other person is an important role.
Yeah.
So that's not to be minimized. And yeah, you don't speak for women. You don't really speak for anybody else, but just to be like curious about how did that feel? What does this feel like your role is? Because you even said in the like how it's come across as the woman's job. You're not saying you are demanding this is a woman's job, but you were like coming at it from like what it feels like her role is. And I think just having an understanding of that brings empathy. So you can like see the other person as a person with their own bodily autonomy and needs and wants and desires and like not wanting. So like, great. That's a healthy thing to be curious about how the other person is receiving and perceiving these actions. So I'm glad that you do that. And yeah, like it changes. There's so much. There is like, I'm speaking to it as women being property. And I realize that we're using very gender specific heteronormative terms in this. That's just how, like, we're not minimizing or saying it doesn't exist in any other type of relationship
I'm
dynamic.
sure it exists in all relationships.
Right? I feel like it does too.
Because it's a societal thing.
It's a societal thing. It's an energetic thing. It has, like, we can speak to our heteronormative, in a sense, relationship that we have, or heteropassing, however, and then our genders. But so we're going to speak to that because that's the language that we have. Completely understanding that it applies
across the board.
So, but having said that, women being property is such a thing.
Yeah.
And that was also like, I'm trying to think if I could pinpoint the programming where I got that message.
Good luck,
Right?
Because it's everywhere.
It's like, but it's intense. It's not just TV. Okay.
You're okay.
Got a little background here. It's a charged situation. I started like keying like traumatic things that were like very, and so as soon as I'm feeling that, and then we're like, but it's a message that I got growing up. It is like, there's so much, okay. I will go off on a tangent here, so I'm not going to. So coming through as women as property, and then roles that we're expected to portray. Unhealthy dynamics, unhealthy relationships where we have to be readily available. And that can be taken from us. And it's still not a take, it's our responsibility in relationships, which all of that is bullshit and not true. That is a lie. That is a lie. That is a lie. I did not know, right? I didn't have that. And so then we change to what I can speak to now is a healthy relationship, or where my body is respected. I am safe in this relationship. And so all of that touch, all of that, I don't know, the sexual energy that was 100% present, I really, really liked that. Like there was like, it felt so good to be safe sexually that like I wanted it all the time. Like all of that grabbing, all of that, I was a willing participant. And then when energy started to shift, and maybe I'm not always in that space, it did feel, not because of you, but because of my programming, because of societal's programming, because of the dynamic that I set up. I felt like I had created this this container. Basically, I had created this thing that said this is okay, and I wasn't allowed to change the rules. And if I changed the rules, I was not only going to be offensive to you, but then I was going to risk losing the relationship, because I also had the understanding that if like the programming, that if I don't provide this readily, willingly, eagerly to you, like make sure that there's no desire anywhere else but to you, then you're going to get that need fit somewhere else. So even if I didn't feel that place, I felt like I had to be in that place. And I didn't really understand that. I didn't really understand that that was an unhealthy dynamic, and one that I didn't need to participate in, and one that you weren't asking me to participate in. Or maybe you were. I don't know. Right? It doesn't feel, I don't know what about then, but I know now you don't ask me to participate in any of that. And then that's just still all what is okay for you and a little bit with me. But then when you start to really like look in and what actually feels good, was it all the sexual energy that felt good? Or was I just so happy to be safe that I could allow the sexual energy to come up? And if I am having a hard time, I do not have to be sexual still. And that doesn't mean that I don't love you. That doesn't mean that that I'm losing interest. And same. Like guys have the always want sex, always got to have it, right? So what happens if you're not feeling it? You know, how part of you does that? Like I perceive, I don't know. You get to speak to that role.
No, baby, tell me how a man
right?
thinks.
I get to woman-splain this one to you. I'm just like, it goes back and forth of where dynamics change. We are like healing people too. So we have gone massive amounts of trauma work, massive amounts of root healing, massive amounts of inner child work, and going through not just only what we've experienced in our relationship, but what we experienced in our entire life, which played out in our relationship.
Yeah.
And so when you're going through all that healing too, like everything changes. Everything changes. What type of season are you in? Where are you at in the healing? So this, like grabbing me right now, doesn't feel good. But 5 minutes later,
it might feel good.
It might feel really good. And I might want all kinds of crazy stuff. So that's why you're talking about like this conversation and how important and crucial it is. So if I don't feel like I'm over providing, then that doesn't leave me depleted. So when I'm feeling like charged and ready, I get to like come out with all of my sexuality and all of my energy and all of my excitement because I haven't like emptied my tank giving it when I wasn't feeling it, when I wasn't able to. And you haven't emptied yours by feeling like you're pulling it out of me.
There's a couple of things that come up for me.
Okay.
And like you said, like the awareness and the recognition of I'm not always in the mood for sex.
Mm-hmm.
Like that thought process, like the internal reflection of asking myself, am I in the mood for sex? Do I feel sexual right now? Do I feel like I want sex? Like that internal process, the ability to even ask myself that question, or even like even that question being on the radar of things that I would ask myself wasn't there for the vast majority of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Where it wasn't even like, it was a default yes. It was a default, of course. But it wasn't even like, I didn't even have awareness of the question itself. It was just like, sex, yes. Like, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's really, I'm thinking about it now and realizing that I didn't even have the context to ask myself that question because that question is already answered for me. And there's no other, like, of course I do. Like, of course I do. What do you mean? Do I want, of course I want sex right now. Well, maybe you're busy. I'll stop doing whatever it is that I'm doing. Well, maybe now's not the right time. It's always the right time. Well, maybe you actually emotionally don't feel safe or open or connected to your partner. None of that matters, right? That's not even on the radar either. And so the idea that is even a question that men are asking themselves, am I actually in the mood for sex right now? I think they're probably not.
Yeah.
Not that I think they're not asking themselves that question. And I think it's because the assumption that men are always in the mood. And then like there's a dynamic too of like, if I stop grabbing your ass, or if I stop showing you that type of, and I use the word affection,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, that is a form of affection in the context of like a healthy relationship where we've had communication about what's safe and what's not safe. And yes, that's a form of affection. If we've kind of agreed upon that's a form of affection, but just grabbing your wife's ass isn't necessarily a form of affection.
Mm-hmm.
And if I stop that behavior, like if I don't show you that, then you don't think you are, like that's how I communicate to you that you're appealing and that you're attractive and that I'm interested in
Mm-hmm.
you. Like that is the thought process that goes through my man brain, right? Well, it's like, how do you show your wife that you love her?
Like I have your sexual attention. I have your
Yes.
interest. I'm what sparks you. You have to show me by doing all. So when you
Yes.
take that away,
Then,
you feel like you're taking away.
and it's not only do I feel like I'm taking that away, but then like, I mean, because there's been times in our relationship where you will very much express to me that you don't feel wanted.
Yeah.
Right. And when we first shifted up this dynamic in our relationship, that came up where
Mm-hmm.
it was like, you don't feel like I desire you or that I want you because I'm not showing you all of that and I'm not displaying all of that behavior.
Yeah. It was before conversations and I didn't understand because I had a role.
Mm-hmm.
And so all I knew is that the role shifted. I hadn't communicated. So it was like, I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
I'm doing something wrong here. Like I'm supposed to provide this thing for you and you don't want this thing. What's happening?
Exactly. There's a problem here suddenly.
So it was super, super scary. And I don't think either of us really had the vocabulary for it at that part.
No.
So either. So it was just like
these are like the subconscious things
Yeah.
that have played out because of the societal programming that we've
Mm-hmm.
had around this topic.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me so sad. Like it's sad to think that there's a part of my brain that like, this is how I show you affection.
Yeah.
Right? That's not how I show you affection. I don't need to grab your boobs to say, hey, I think you're a beautiful, amazing woman and I'm happy to be with you.
Yeah, you can say that.
Right?
You can show me that in
say
other
that.
words. And like it's also a form. Like it's not all we have, but like, I don't know, maybe I'm going to jump the gun here. I won't jump the gun yet. Keep going.
No, you're fine.
I think I'm feeling how now that we have these conversations, there's no like, it doesn't feel like the ego gets in the way or like roles, responsibilities get in the way. We just check in with the other person. Like jumping forward, like we have this, how did it start with these little things, these communications? Like we're giving like a jump into that. Does physical touch feel okay for you right now? And then even clarifying that on sometimes, because sometimes, yes, physical touch, physical connection feels good. I want a hug. I want you to sit next to me. I do not want any sexual touch right now. I don't want to don't start caressing. Don't that does not feel safe. I want to feel loved and supported next to you right in this space. And I feel safe with you. And so touch feels good and me touching you feels good, but sexual touch is not on the table. And so when you are able to elaborate that and we don't get offended by that. It's like, after we got through like figuring out what was happening and figuring out how these dynamics are now going to play out while you're asking these questions to yourself and to your partner. But it's like touch has become like when touch is good, right? But when touch isn't good and you pretend like it's okay because you don't understand that you're like, there's a part of you that doesn't even realize in yourself that you cannot be okay with it.
Right.
It doesn't feel good. So it's so easy to get lost in but when I feel good, I'm there. So I'll just get myself there. It's my responsibility to make sure I'm there. So I'm still providing.
There's something wrong with me.
Yes. So I
need to alter and shift so that I can then be in this agreed upon arrangement because we're in this relationship where this is this is the norm.
This is the norm, or even the projection. If they would do this or stop doing this, then I would be here. So it's their fault that I'm not here. That there's still something wrong, and there's nothing wrong.
There's another thing that I think has really stood out as well, because it's not just like the interaction day in and day out and kind of how it plays out in our relationship. But there's also this thing that we shifted up and changed that I think was a really big deal as well. We haven't dove deep into this topic on the podcast before, but then we also have just been like actively working on this in our relationship. And kind of as I sit and I really look at it and I look back over the course of my life, there's another component to this, not just with the physical touch and everything that we're talking about, but it's also like being naked. And there's like this agreed upon thing in our relationship at some point where like it's just accepted that we're comfortable being naked in front of each other. So that fluidity and the freedom to come and go naked, or like if you're in the shower or you just got out of the shower or something like that, I just have the freedom to walk into the bathroom for whatever reason, right? I don't have to now respect your privacy when you're naked, because
I have access to you and your body at any moment,
at any given time. Yeah. And it's not, it's not just because suddenly I'm going to have sex or I want to have sex or I'm, walking in on you naked, because it's just like this comfortability that now exists. And there's a part of that that is, I think, good and fine, right? There's nothing wrong with if it feels okay. And there's also the dynamic of like you said earlier, like your bodily autonomy, like this is my body and I have the freedom to say what feels good and what doesn't feel good at any given moment throughout the entire like day, all the time. So we shifted that up where it was like knocking on the door and, do you know what I mean? Like making sure that, and it's hard. There's a part of me that misses seeing you naked, and I like seeing you naked. And even though I have that part of me that misses it, it definitely does not override the part of me that wants you to feel comfortable and wants you to feel safe. But there's dynamics of it where like it's just challenging and it's hard. And there's also like this is an ongoing practice that we have. This isn't something that we somehow have managed to perfect all the time.
Right.
I will fall back into these routines of just grabbing your ass or doing whatever, as I walk by you or something like that. And I have to consciously remind myself that, oh, wait, maybe you're not in the mood for that type of touch, for that type of physical affection. And so then I really have to check in with myself, and then not just check in with myself, but then also obviously check in with you and where you're at, because it is so subconsciously ingrained, I think, in society that this is kind of just the way that it manifests in relationships. So it's important to continually practice it.
There's also like a change with it too, of because it can change randomly. It's like 1 minute you come in and I'm like, ooh la la. And you walk back in the room ready for ooh la la. And I'm like, not there. You have no way of knowing.
Yeah.
And so when it was just right there, but we have this dynamic now too that we've been practicing, is like where I will tell you, like I'll have a reaction like, ooh, and then be able to communicate that quickly. And I feel safe to communicate that quickly and be like, I'm not there right now, or that doesn't feel good. Can you just give me a hug? Or just, I kind of like, I don't feel like I'm no longer allowed. And that's a scary thing for me to say. Like, regardless of, that has not been a weapon that you've used. Like I have not had to be afraid to tell you no, a fear of violence. That has never been something that I've experienced with you. We've been together 10 years now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ken? Yes. But I have
40 people. We've been together 40 years.
This is just like to give some like conceptual, like just some awareness out there. I experienced that my entire life. My body was not mine. It was like, we can get into all of that trauma. So just regardless of what level you've experienced that, and most people have experienced it in some degree. So we get into that relationship too, where that dynamic where maybe the other partner can't quite understand how their partner can't feel safe with them all the time for that touch, because that violence or that any kind of like degree has not been in that relationship. And so it doesn't make sense, which also can lead towards it turning toxic in that sense, because they feel like because it doesn't apply to this relationship, that reaction isn't valid. And so I'll push past it.
I did that where I was like, I'm not necessarily push past it, but I would have that frame of mind. I'm like, I've never done this. Why am I being, like, why can't you get over that?
Yeah.
And recognize that this is a safe relationship, and I'm not, using sex in an abusive, controlling,
right.
Whatever.
That's your past. Deal with it over there.
Exactly.
Here's fine. Let's go.
You don't have to, don't worry about that. That doesn't exist in our relationship.
So boom, you feel sexy now, right? Clothes off.
Exactly. Instead of like accounting for how trauma sits in the body.
Yeah.
Now you have like, and that's been a big shift. Mm-hmm. Where it's like, oh yeah, of course, this is going to bring up and trigger things inside of you. And
so it's not personal
either. It's not personal.
It gets to be safe. I feel safe enough. When you can give somebody your no, that's a safe thing that builds intimacy, that builds you were going to say something.
You're okay. No, there's a part of this that, because we've been talking about this from the perspective of like men having to change, right?
Oh, I didn't realize it was just men. I thought we were like both,
yes.
Both partners, all partners.
Yes, shifting and changing up this dynamic in the relationship. But there's like this overarching thing where this is a behavior that is masculine. This is a behavior that men do. This is something that men have to look at differently. And that's very much the case. Now, there's another layer to this that has been really profoundly important for me and has made a really big shift as well, is the recognition of what I'm actually feeling.
Yeah.
And when touch doesn't feel safe for me, and when affection doesn't feel safe for me, and when I need to say no, when I need to say not right now, when I need to recognize what I'm feeling and how I am triggered or how I'm going through some sort of trauma response, and being able to articulate that and doing that as it's hard for anybody, right? It doesn't matter if you identify as a man or a woman. That's a difficult thing to do.
Yes.
But there's like, I'm not saying it's extremely hard for men, but there's a component of the masculine toxicity that exists in our society that make that dynamic really challenging for men to even entertain. So yes, I can get on board with this because I'm recognizing my wife and I'm recognizing my partner and all of the importance there. And it's important for me to make her feel safe. And I want her to feel all of those things. And then flipping it and being like, do I actually feel safe in this moment? Do I actually feel comfortable with whatever form of affection you're trying to give me? Because like, this is a really weird, nuanced thing. Men and women give affection differently. Mm-hmm. And this isn't just honing in on people, right? Everybody shows love. There's love languages and all these kind of different things. So it's not just specific to your gender, but there is affection that typically we could label feminine, or the type of affection that would be given from a woman that doesn't feel safe for me sometimes. Yeah. So like wanting to hug me or give me affection when I'm triggered or when I'm activated or when I'm upset or even when I'm sad sometimes, mm-hmm. that type of affection does not feel safe for me.
Yeah.
Like it freezes my body and I immediately get like if I had hackles, my hackles would be up and I would be like in just this really uncomfortable moment, but not being able to express it, instead just like doubling down on anger and trying to push away in defensiveness instead of just recognizing what like the somatic experience of what my body was going through. Mm-hmm. And me being able to communicate that to you and you making that a safe thing to communicate, but then also not punishing me for it, not turning it around and getting defensive, not spiraling out into like, what, you don't love me, my love doesn't, like, you don't want me to, like, all of those things that can play out sometimes and have played out in our mm-hmm. relationship, all of those things not happening, and instead just giving me the space to say, this doesn't feel good for me right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's been huge. And like, I'm proud of myself for being able to speak those things. Yeah. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's really hard. And I think there's an added component because of the toxicity of masculinity in society that makes it really hard for men to even look at that. So it's not even mm-hmm. the ability to speak it, but to even look at, I have to check in with how I'm feeling in regards to like, you know, like not even, I mean, there's so many layers of this because there's the added layer too of it's not just like, give me a hug when I'm sad. It's, I don't want sex right now, mm-hmm. right? Is it safe for me to say that in my relationship? And what does that then turn around and make me feel? Like if I say that I don't want sex right now, that's a dangerous thing for me to say.
I don't want sex and I don't want to be sexualized.
Yeah. Like that's a scary thing for me to mm-hmm. say as a man, if I'm willing to like admit it, if I'm willing to actually look at what that brings up inside of me, instead of just sticking into those stereotypes of like, well, I always want sex. So yeah, I can support you and saying, you don't want it, but you let me know when you're ready.
Because I'm ready. I got my man card. I'm ready.
You let me know. Oh, yeah, you get all the space to say, of course, I love and you support you. Of course.
There's
like,
no allowance for your true feelings
exactly.
in that space. It's like, it's so hard.
It is really hard. And we've mastered it.
Yeah, we are. We're professionals.
So there's a lot here. And I think that like what we have done and what we encourage people to do, and you know, if this is something that you see play out in your relationship, first and foremost is it's like getting really curious. It's always curiosity that's going to guide you towards mm-hmm. the things that's going to help, right? So it's getting curious about where are we at with physical affection in our relationship? And are we comfortable with that, or do we want some things to change? So you have to ask yourself that question, and then you have to have this conversation with your partner. Where are we at with it? What's comfortable? How can we start the conversation about this? Because it's going to fluctuate and change over and over and over and over and over again. So
agreed. Agreed.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's Let's move on to the next topic. No.
Are we moving on?
Yeah. So
what are we moving on to?
To the question this week.
To the question? Well, this topic actually will have an answer for the question too. So it's funny. We'll both elaborate on this. Let me pull it up exactly.
Okay. By the way, if you ever want to reach out, you can send us questions at info@energyislove.love, and we answer questions each week on the podcast. So shoot us an email or reach out on social and submit your questions.
Okay. So I'm going to add to this question. So this was, what if I don't have a partner? How can I do shadow or self-work without my partner mirroring for me? And I think that will also play into the sexual conversations that we've had too. So what if you don't have a partner?
Well,
you live alone? No, that's not.
You got to get one.
Kidding. Jesus. He's kidding.
If you don't have a partner, you're failing in life.
Craig, that's not even funny. You can't joke about that.
It's kind of funny.
I'm
obviously joking.
It's obviously joking, but I was like, no, that's not even fun. That's not.
Okay.
Different. Read the room.
If you don't have a partner, of course you can still dive into your stuff, right? Of course you can still do shadow work. Of course you can still start looking at things.
How does that like mirror though? Is what they're like, how does when they don't have the partner mirroring? So you can look at, in my perspective, and you can add on this, is relationships that you do have. Relationships aren't always like romantic, right? So the platonic relationships, you can look at the people in your life that maybe it's not even a personal level, but a professional level, the way that you interact, how they interact with you, and how you respond internally to them and to situations. So noticing what is coming up in you, your judgments are a really good mirror. And it's not just negative judgments, it's positive judgments. It's your perceptions that you are projecting out onto anyone or anything, getting curious about it. So even if it's just like watching a TV show and what is coming up for you based off of the characters, it is lighting up something in you that is right there. That is a mirror. That is something that you can look at, and being able to be in your own space and then really get curious about why. Why did this give me this reaction? Why did I feel so drawn to this type of character? Maybe it's like the terrible character, like the villain, like the one that's like causing a lot of like chaos and harm, but for some reason that's where you're going. Maybe it's the one that triggers you the most, is the really nice one that is very kind and compassionate and ready to show up, and you're like, fuck that, that's scary. So it's just like, even like those, what reactions seem societally appropriate? Why? What is that bringing up with you? Reactions that you're like, ooh, that's not what they were going for. Why? What does that bring up in you? This person drives you crazy. Why? So there are mirrors everywhere. Yes, having a partner that is in your space provides a different type of mirror, and it brings up other things, but that is not the only path. That is not the only mirror in your life. Even when you have a partner in this really amazing relationship where you are mirroring for each other and you have this conscious awareness and you're going back and forth, they're not your only mirror, and you can't make them your only mirror. You still have to like see what is coming in and the projections. The work, the self-work, is about every experience surrounding you, because self-work is all about you. So it's about going in.
Yeah, the idea that only a partner can mirror things for you. The world is the mirror. Every relationship, every interaction, and it's not even the interpersonal relationships. It's the person at the grocery store. It's like everything that you said, babe. It's all of these different things are going to spark something inside of you if you get curious about it and if you look. The interpersonal relationships, it's like layers of work, right? It's layers of depth. It's really diving into the shadow from the surface all the way down to the deepest, darkest parts. There's layers all along the way. And the interpersonal relationships that you have, so the relationships that you have with your parents, if you have siblings, if you have friends, if you have coworkers,
children,
all of these children are a huge mirror.
Huge.
And all of those relationships, and the ones that are closest to us, like your closest relationships are the ones that are going to reflect the deeper layers of your shadow, if you are willing to look. And then the ones that are on the outside of that kind of close inner circle type relationship, they're still going to mirror things for you. They're still going to show things for you. And that's what it's all about. Being able to recognize what is coming up inside of you, what is being triggered inside of you, what emotional reaction are you having or maybe not having, and then that becomes the work in and of itself. So you don't have to be in a long-term committed relationship to start working on yourself or even to start diving into your things. The added benefit of that is the depth with which you can go. So you're going to be able to go into things deeper in a close, committed relationship. And that's not to say like you have to be in one or you can't go as deep as you could go if you aren't in a relationship. That everybody's different and everybody's depth is different of where they're at and what they're capable or willing to do. But there's a thing that happens in a committed relationship, especially one where you are willing to do this type of work together, that takes you, it's almost like a completely different space. It's just a new level of inner work that takes place and shadow work that takes place that
it doesn't mean like higher or lower levels. It's just different area.
I hate to say that it's
playing field, not a level of or skill or achievement. It's just a different space.
It's just a different space.
Yeah.
And for us, it's the space that kind of creates the most healing and the most growth. But that's us, and everybody's different. And there's no reason why that can't take place with friends, with family. And you don't have to have an active participant in that either. Like, that's the beautiful thing is whatever your relationship is bringing up for you, it's self-work. It's all about you. You don't have to have the other person's willingness to show up as your mirror. Surprise, surprise. Like, they don't have to be like, okay, I'll mirror for you.
Right.
They're just doing it, anyways, if you're willing to look into that mirror and if you're willing to reflect. And then the truth too is it's the layered aspect of what is this person bringing up inside of me? Recognizing what that is, and then internally reflecting on that, and then mirroring for yourself and going inwards and seeing what is coming up for me. Where is this connected? What is the emotion behind this? What am I resisting? It always, not always, but kind of always comes down to what are you pushing away or what are you pulling towards you? Like, what are you resisting and what are you going towards? And that is the thing of getting really curious. Like, you have to get really curious about that, because the things that we are pushing away from us are often triggered by traumas and wounds and everything like that. And then the same applies. The things that we're pulling towards us are also stemming from trauma and from wounds. And you have to see both dynamics in order to kind of make peace with it all, and then get to that place where you can just allow, and there is no more push or pull.
Yeah.
So it's a great question.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're big fans of couple shadow work and working together in it and using that beautiful thing that just naturally happens in the world and in existence. Right. But it's not required. Of course not. Right.
Yeah. And even in couples, in partnerships, however many and whatever dynamics, it is still required for you. Like, I mean, I guess it's not required, but nothing's required. Like, you get to choose like whatever. However, you can't have all this like language, right? It's incredibly beneficial for you to like allow the mirror, allow the partnership, allow all of that building that is possible. And you've got to do your own shit. Like, over here, completely separate, that can have like nothing to do with that. So if you are not in a partnership, great. You're that energy isn't come through. You're able to like self-reflect and all of these things. If you're in a partnership, great. That energy is coming through. It's pulling out depths in different areas that you weren't able to see by yourself. You're by yourself, great. You're able to tap into areas that you wouldn't be able to see because you had a partner in the way. So see, like the point is that we are all able, and I don't know. I just like able and willing is the thing, but I'm willing. Doesn't mean you're willing at this point. I haven't always been willing. I've been like, hell no. But we are always in a space where we can dive into ourselves and get curious about the makeup and why, and bring our best selves forward. And that is messy and dirty and hard, and it's wonderful and exciting. It's so many things. So there's no, are people in your space? Are you or not? Are you doing it right or not? Do you have this access or not? It's just, you get to show up. You get, healing is it's a journey that everybody gets to play. every oh, that's a trigger, huh? Everybody has the opportunity to show up. There's no piece that, you just show up. You just start wherever you are. That's where you are. That's right where you're supposed to be. And you show up and you start there if you want to. And if you don't want to, don't worry about it.
Yeah,
it'll come
stress.
when it comes. When you're ready, you'll start working on it. So it's all up to you. You have the wheel. You get to decide. And I think this also goes for the sexual talk too, of like, you don't have to have a partner to find out what feels good for you sexually, to find out where you are. Like if it's just it's just you, what actually feels good for you? What excites you? What does not excite you? And then when you find the excitements and the aversions again, why? Does this actually excite me? Does this actually feel good? Do I actually like long for this? Or is this just what I'm told I'm supposed to want? Do I actually not want this? Or is this what society has just told me is bad and shameful and I shouldn't want? And so you get to get curious with that. And then you also get to get curious with touch. You get to touch yourself. What feels good? How do you like to be touched? What feels good for you? Yes, you're allowed to touch yourself. If you don't feel like that, why? Get curious. And so you can still do all of this work. And then when and if you choose to be in a relationship with somebody else or even a sexual encounter, you have that awareness that you're bringing. You know what you want sexually, or you know areas where you're curious sexually or what feels good, but you're getting comfortable with, yes, I like this, no, I don't, with yourself. So when you're with somebody else, you've already practiced and you can start to express that. Yes, no. Let's do this. Let's not do that ever again. Just kind of a curiosity. Partners are great and not necessary. So I'm really happy I have one. It's okay if you don't.
Me too. I'm really happy I have one as well. And I'm happy it's you.
I'm happy it's you.
Thank you for listening. Remember, you can send us questions anytime. It's info@energyisLove.love. And go tell somebody about this podcast. Yeah. Share it. It's the year of sharing, we decided, right? That's the name of this. 2023 is all about sharing this year. Okay. So tell somebody about the podcast. Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.